This is the Ghetto Free Press, and I'm George Boston Rhynes, the voice. And I was reading the Equipment Free Press and everything that they said, including the long article wherein they did a day-by-day breakdown of what took place in the courtroom with Lula Smart, one of the Equipment 10 plus 2. Then I read all articles from the Valdosta Daily Times. And I reflected on how they saw that particular trial wherein it was a mistrial. And I know that they have given their take on it, but today I'm out here to my beautiful brother John Robinson, a member of Antioch Baptist Church, associate pastor there. And so I wanted him to reflect in his own way, because we both was over there for the complete 5-day trial. And the last day we heard an actual mistrial. What's your take on the trial, what happened concerning the judge's actions, the attorneys, and just tell us what do you think about it?
I think C.B. King did an outstanding job. When he first called the issue to hand a couple of days prior to them announcing it would be a mistrial, I think that happened on a Wednesday, I believe it was.
Yes, sir.
And it was something, a remark the jury had made, that the jury had heard, that Mr. King said that he didn't believe that his client would get a fair trial from that point on, and therefore he requested for a mistrial. And the state really didn't bring very much evidence as far as what they was claiming to be. Everyone they put on, it appeared that the people that they called for their own witnesses, it didn't work out for them the way they thought it was going to work out. You know, they was more or less intimidating people. A lady got up there and they made mention about something about a child. She had lost a son, I believe it was, and they had actually went to her home and showed her the death certificate and this kind of thing. The G.B.R, I believe it was, done something of that nature, and that was the state itself. And the lady got pretty intimidated until she burst out into tears and she got speechless. And I kind of think that moved that judge to a degree. And then some of the other witnesses that they had to come up with.
And what about her husband? He came right on the trial.
Oh yes, her husband, he came up and when they got into the issues, and he had lost a father too as well. And they brought this up and it had the appearance that these people were just being bashed from the time that this investigation started. The witnesses come forward that the state brought up, and they didn't have nothing favorable. They talked like the people were intimidated. The questions came up was, how was the G.B.R. dressed? And they said they first came up in a 3-piece suit. You know, I guess that could have just been a blazer, a tie, and a pair of slacks, so it could have been a blazer with a vest. But they didn't give that elaborate description, but they was in a suit the first day. They came out, so that wasn't so intimidating. So the next time they appear with the big guns on their sides and their badges and all on their belts, and they came in an intimidating state. You know as well as I know that any time an officer of the law come up to approach you, you getting a little nervous because you're wondering why they first coming to approach you. There must be something wrong. Have you violated the law? All these questions run through your mind. You know, he didn't just stopping you to have a nice day. He got to have probable cause. So if he stopped you, you figuring that something probable came up to give him cause to stop you, either to come by your place. So people were pretty intimidated, and that came forward on the witness stand.
Okay, when it comes down to the article that I watched and read in the Equipment Free Press, Mr. Robinson, they made no mention of the jury selection process. It seems as if though they totally ignored that the other court date was delayed because there was a question about the fairness in the selection process of the jury. Then this particular jury, there was 108 people that were called, and of that 108, only 40 was in the final circles, and then from there it was narrowed down to 14 people, of which only 2 was on the jury, even the 2 alternate was white. And I later found out by getting more interested in the case that the state prosecutors used their 9 strikes. Both sides have 9 strikes. They can strike people. They used all 9 of their strikes to get the very few blacks that was in that last pool excluded from being on the jury. So my point is to you, why do you think the local newspapers did not include that in any of their writings since the trial was delayed because of a potential race issue in the selection process?
Well, see, you were there. They had one guy come there, I think started on a Tuesday, wasn't there on a Monday. We didn't have no media coverage that Monday. Then I think Battle of the Daily Time had someone to come out. But you did an analytical process after the fact of the case that someone needed the review, okay? Because you analyzed it the same as a analyst would do, and you put together, he really put together a really super projection as to what occurred in the case, like a day-to-day basis. He got, it's analytically correct from what he put together. It's a very thorough data of the case profile. And I think that you need to probably put that together and put that up as a review. Someone else needs to see it other than myself and you and a couple others, because it's very unique what you put together. I was the lead plaintiff in a civil litigation, and you'll find me in the New York School of Law for Justice, and you'll find that in the case study laws, okay, where it says that the case study shows where they use this case in discovery. Well, Brother Rhynes here, he did something similar to that actually can be in comparison to that. So you can get a good understanding of really what occurred in that courtroom. And it's historical. The way you've done it and the way he has it where you can understand what this jury may have been thinking. You can understand by the structure, the nature, how the state presented its case, how it uncovers how the G.B.R. went about the investigation.
Well, you mentioned that, and before I forget it, when the attorney asked about why would they have someone else to write down the voters' response to the questions on the G.B.R. form versus having a tape recorder, and in some cases, and correct me if I'm wrong, they wrote it down wrong. They said Miss Martin had done something, and the person said, I didn't write that. One lady said, that's not my signature. So why do you think that the newspaper will show one side, but will not be fair and balanced when it comes down to the defense and the fight that the Lula smart attorney put up?
Well, let me see, can I get a little bit more clarity to what he's saying. They had a questionnaire that needed to be filled out by the person. Well, the person sat there and spoke with the officer from the G.B.R. and the guy from the
Secretary of State office.
Yeah, the Secretary of State office. The investigator from the Secretary of State office, they actually was doing the handwriting while this person was talking to them instead of the person filling it out themselves. And they did not write down the statements that these people were stating because they said that wasn't what they said. When they read this off to the jury and they showed it, they put it on a projection, showed it against the wall, and they asked them, is this what you wrote, is this what you said? They said, that's my signature, but that's not what I said. So, you know, all of this was involved, and this what you'll find in his report. It'll be broken down. See, listen to this here. Now, this is not getting off the subject, but this is pertaining to the subject based upon everyone is supposed to expect for justice and equality of the law by our state officials. It says, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic of which it stands, one nation under God, liberty and justice for all. Now, see, that little statement there is a broad statement for justice and equality of the law. This man is a veteran from the United States military, George Boston Rhynes I'm speaking of. And he dedicated his time, he could have been doing something else, to go down here to stand with the Equipment 10 plus 2. You know, one of them lost their lives, they passed, so it was 10 still, but we still honor that person, even though they were deceased. So he took it upon himself to go down and to bring this so that you could understand what's really going on in your life pertaining to the laws of your country. I know right now we're in the middle of a shutdown. You see this country is actually divided. And what you see is happening is by a divided country, the Quitman was a little divided town prior to this shutdown, okay? And the way it was divided was that this is the first time that blacks dominated the school board, and people resented that. All the way down to the postman that worked in the post office that launched this thing off. He looked and he saw some ballots come in that he couldn't even really explain to the jury. He didn't explain to me what gave him the right to go in and snoop into the mail. They call that flagging, okay? But he went in and he flagged the mail. It was old remedy news back in the 1800s that they was profiling and flagging the mail, where they'd go in and extract certain mail out, okay? Because it raised suspicions that it would help change legislative issues. So this guy did the same thing. So that means it's something that's ongoing from yesteryear, okay? Another century. So we find today that the nation is divided, equipment is divided, because now, don't no one want to call it out. They say it's involving issues pertaining to race.
Doc, let me regress back, because I think that was a very important point that you made. This postal worker had been working there for 17 years. And when the attorney for the defense said, I asked him, had he ever heard of the Privacy Act? Right. And because he took the ballots, wrote down the information from these ballots, passed it on to a private investigator, to the G.B.R. He took some of it to his own home and put it in his shirt pocket. And the G.B.R. went to his house and picked up this information. Now, don't you think that the Secretary of State, Brian P. Kemp, and the Justice Department, and possibly the Postmaster General, should look into that? And although the Valdosta, Daily Times and the Equipment Free Press didn't cover that issue, don't you think that is worthy for another set of eyes?
Well, listen, not only that, they are guilty of what they accuse them of. The lady that worked in the Secretary of State office, she carried them home with her. And what we were beginning to hear that maybe they was exposed to her grandchildren.
No, you mean the registrar?
The registrar, whatever position.
Right.
That's who that were?
Yeah.
Well, the registrar. She carried them to her home. So now, the very issue that they accuse these people of, they are guilty of admission of the same thing. But these people didn't go as far as they did.
Now, if they did, and I think they did, they accused Lula Smart as mishandling of absentee ballots. Yep. Now, based upon that, and if the postal clerk took those and held them inappropriately, and the other lady, the registrar lady who actually worked there in the post, if she took them home, had two other people to help her process them because the work was too heavy. In addition, they also used her granddaughter, and then talked about that she deputized them. I don't remember if they ever showed the form of the where she actually deputized them. Yet, to me, don't you think that the Equipment Free Press and the Valdosta Daily Times and other news media outlets should have told the people here in South Georgia that had happened, so at least they could be aware that they may be mishandled, that their absentee ballots and even their tax information could be jeopardized by somebody working at the Postal Service who never even heard of the Privacy Act?
Not only that, the idea that the register took them home and they were supposed to have remained in the building of a secure place. That's major right there.
Well, in addition to that, now since you brought that up, when the defense attorney, C.B. King, asked the question, asked her, did she know of any law that gave her permission to take them home? She said, I don't know. And I'm talking about many years, more years working there than the postal man. So what do you think about that? Don't you think that the local newspapers here in South Georgia, if they're going to inform the general public, don't you think that we should have known that as well, rather than keeping it secret?
How can you enforce the law and you don't know the rules of law? You first of all got to know the rules of law to be able to enforce the law. if you enforce a law that you don't know the rules of law, anything you do is injustifiable because you don't have a clue to what you were doing.
Another thing, there was something else that brought up at this trial. If you remember, the mother was called. She would say she was in her backyard, raking her yards. They sent the sheriff out to her house during that Friday trial, part of the trial, the 5th day, brought her up to the courthouse and put her on the stand. And she had to ask like that. I mean, I could only imagine how she must have felt. And so this intimidation that you talked about, and I talked about it way before the trial. I talked about it two years ago when wasn't nobody talking about it. It never was published in the newspaper that those people, when Pastor Benjamin and myself walked the street, and those people told us that they was intimidated by the G.B.R. and an agent that drove a white truck. But none of the newspapers, they ignored that. But it seemed like the week of the trial, we found out that what they told us was indeed the truth.
Well, you know, what you're going to really find, and what everyone got to get in their mind, is we know for a fact this is a new day, a new era in time. The problem that we're failing to realize is that this new era and this new day in time is overshadowed by the cloud of the past. And no one don't want to go there to recognize this is what's going on. And everyone is still captivated by this great cloud of this shadow. And we mesmerize by it. But we don't want to bear the responsibility to say, you know, that's what's going on with Obama. We don't want to bear the responsibility to say that's what's going on with Equipment 10 or 12. We don't want to say that's what's going on with Economic 10 Lowndes County. But that's what's going on.
Another thing, did you find it strange? Because I did. I found it strange that on the very first day, the mics didn't work. Therefore, the mics was an impediment. They would put your little mic up here, it didn't work. And so eventually they had to just work around that. So they had the problem with the mics. That wasn't published in the Equipment Free Press. They had a problem with light shining in the juror's face from the top window. None of this was published. There was also impediments with people undoubtedly not being accustomed to calling the court itself into order. And so I addressed the sheriff as well as the bailiffs about it, and of course they started doing that. But in 2013, how could a courtroom be set up and not know the general basic? And personally, I think that Judge Lane was frustrated by what was going on and the way that situation was handled. He even referred to the bad acoustic system, and when women walk, it was making noise, and so he told them to put it near tiptoe or walk on the front part of their shoe rather than because there's too much noise going on.
Too much noise, and he did get frustrated with it. But I do say this. When the case was over, I commended him for his duties he had served.
Yes, sir.
And for the decision he had made.
Absolutely.
And he didn't seem like he was caught up by the quagmire of the South. He seemed like a person that was there to call the shot the best as he could. And I don't believe that he leaned in neither direction.
Right, I agree.
Okay? I believe that he saw when those people coming in got intimidated, that he seen that the state just didn't have no case because it was panning out to that. Because every witness they brought up, C.B. King and Ms. Walker and that other young lady,
Miss Summers out of Atlanta.
They were cutting them to shreds with facts. And it just kept going on. And if this case would have continued, it was going to cost the taxpayers a lot of money.
Yeah. What do you think about this is that when they started the trial, they told us we couldn't record, so they shut me down. I couldn't record in the front of the courthouse. However, it seemed to me that if they had already resolved the problem in terms of routine procedures, that wouldn't even been necessary because, number one, they would have taken the jury out through the back where he finally said that he was going to take them out through the back. And number two, he reserved parking spaces in the back of the courthouse for them to park rather than having to park where everybody doesn't go fight for parking spaces. What's your take on that?
Well, my friend, I hate to go back to this, but what you're experiencing is the shadow of clouds. And those are the old clouds of the South from the past years, where they don't want things to be known. See, this trial was going to be like a well-kept little secret. That's why the media didn't come out. to the degree when it did come out, they wouldn't publish it. Like with Kendrick Johnson, Ken Valdosta, like in Jacksonville, they put it on the front page.
Yes, sir, that's right.
Valdosta, they put it deep within the page.
That's right, that's right.
Okay? So you see, this is a 5-county scenario. So what happened in the jurisdiction of the 5-county scenario, it affects all the other 4 counties. So the decision that's made in Quitman affected these other 4 counties because they make up the metro complex of the city of Valdosta. Okay, because that's how Valdosta became a metro city. It took all 5 counties to meet the metropolitan standards.
Okay, now another area that I noticed missing from all the newspapers and television, the fact that District Attorney David Miller was the one who sent up the powerful letter to the GBI in different places to get this investigation started. When in truth we have the Assistant District Attorney Brad Shealy, we also have Board Member Cunningham. All these people are within the clique of power in Lowndes and Brooks County. So that alone was a conflict of interest. And so now that we look back at it and to look at the little information that was published about this trio of people that was involved in getting this thing to trial, I think that Eric Holder of the Department of Justice just may need to take a look at this case and let it set a precedent possibly for North Carolina, where they're having problems turning their hands back on voting rights of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And so I think that they could learn something from the transcript. In fact, I will say it again. I think that this whole nation should use the Quitman 10+2 case and get that transcript. All civil rights organizations and women groups should take a look at this case. What you think?
Yeah, of course. Anytime it's to the indefiniteness of the transfer of power. Okay, that's from the hands of a dominator for all those years on voters' rights issues. Of course, it needs to be reviewed. When the gavel exchange hands, okay, that means that everything within its jurisdiction comes underneath the sign of that gavel as far as law and order. Now, when I say law and order, we're talking about protocolic rules, laws pertaining to government statutes. Okay, in other words, they're on the school board now. Therefore, they're in control of the school board for the very first time. That means that people that had these high-paying jobs don't have them anymore. They used to have them. This means that decisions that we made on one-sidedness and unfairness is not being made anymore. Now we're talking about a spectrum of justice and equality. Now, let me say it like this. If I say it the wrong way, people are going to take it the wrong way. But I'm going to say it to the best of my ability.
The right way.
Anytime the power is transferred from a society that's been dominated by white power for years and never been challenged, and the gavel changed hands, the hand that it goes in cannot afford to be biased. It has to be justifiable. It cannot look out for one group or it'll be guilty of the same as the ones that were before them. So now it's a strong possibility that you're going to see justice and equality for the first time. These people can't go into these positions and go by the old plague of the South. And they got to do things according to the way it needs to be done. So the lady, Ms. Nancy, okay, she's a person that believes in justice and equality for everybody.
It's obvious of that.
Okay, and there's no one-sidedness. So here is the first time that the blacks are demonstrating. If you go out and campaign, there's a lot behind this. To run a winnable campaign, because you was in a predominant black area.
Doc, did you hear what I heard? And all I want you to do is you can elaborate on it, but I just want you to ask me a yes or no. Did you hear people say that they probably wouldn't vote no more?
Oh, yes.
They said they were so intimidated. They say, one lady even took it to this degree. She said, I just was exercising my right, and now here I am in court.
That's right.
So if nothing else, I think that Eric Holder, Secretary of State Brian P. Kemp, and others in the civil rights movement ought to look into and look at the transcript of Equipment 10 based upon that alone.
Right.
If they say they wouldn't vote no more.
You're right, you're right.
Because undoubtedly the G.B.R, the Secretary of State's office, and the investigators and others did a pretty darn good job in trying to suppress the black vote.
No. I stand here and say this. If the review of my credibility of a one-of-a-kind litigation could stand to persuade anybody to understand that pertaining to justice, that what you were saying is factually true, there is definitely a need, and there's a need for this to be reviewed. Even though it's in a small place, there is a need. If my case could be used by the Congress for a man without a lawyer, I would stand here as the lead plaintiff of that litigation and say this words here. George Boston Rhynes is absolutely correct. Mr. Avery Holder, all you high-appointed officials need to give a review on this. It's not the size of a missile necessary that sinks a ship. It's the accuracy of how it's fired and how it keyed in on its target and bring about such devastating damage. But what I'm saying is that this, in order to make such a shot, it's got to be plotted. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be planned, and it's got to be well executed. So this means that if you was to take and review this, you could see the scheme, the plot, and the plan, and how it was executed.
Doc, in closing, we got about a minute left. I'm going to be brief. In closing, do you think that it was a calculated effort by the South Georgia news media to not be in these meetings because it was so high profile? They should have been there every day to monitor, to get back with the voters in the state of Georgia, to keep them informed. So my question direct to you, do you think it was a calculated effort on behalf of the South Georgia news media not to give a thorough review on what actually took place in the courtroom starting on September 23rd through the 27th?
As sure as the sun rose this morning, as sure as the sun in the south is the beauty and the glory of the day at how many Mediterranean, you are absolutely correct.
Thank you so much. We're going to let those words close this out. Doc Robinson, close us with a very short closing of everything we've said in your own opinion.
My opinion is that someday, by some means, old Martin Luther King saying, we shall overcome. We gonna have to tear down these barriers. And we got to keep people like those people down there. And we got to utilize our right to vote. Because you should say, as you hear these words from a soldier, which I'm not, which Brother Rhynes is I pledge allegiance. See, when you pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
This is the Ghetto Free Press, George Boston Rhynes, KYRC, Know Your Rights campaign. We are the voice, and this is the voice of the people. And there are those who are against the voice of the people, but we want you to know, and so bye-bye, we gone.